We'll call the work session to order. All right,
Okay.
can I hand out a couple of things before you get started? Okay. Justine had sent out an email asking for information for the auditors, and we need to make sure that that is given to her.
But I need to start with the steam line. There's folks outside waiting for an answer, so you have a proposal in front of you. So initially the board passed it was about $67,000 for 180 feet of replacement line. They dug it up and came back at us and said that they needed to do 84 more feet around the corner to catch up to where they had replaced about 3 years ago. So we were 2 weeks away from a meeting, so I said, well, we gotta do it. So I had them do that. They got it all welded back together last weekend, fired it up, and they blew a hole through right, there's a small section from where the boiler comes out to the manhole in the parking lot. So we ran it that way with the leak for the last, about a week or so.
Yeah, a little over a week.
And they gave us this proposal then. This includes the 84 feet and that they already did, and the area from the boiler to the manhole. So they started uncovering it today, so they could start prefabbing the pipe. And once they uncovered it, it kind of let loose. They tried putting a patch over the main problem there, and they fired it back up and it blew another hole a little further down the line. So they're feeling like that's probably they're not going to be able to patch it together to get us to the weekend. So I'm looking at 2 days off right now. I'm just wondering how you feel about that.
Just to shut down, and so they can shut the steam line completely down to repair that line without, okay.
Well, the kids are already freezing in there, wearing jackets and mittens.
You know, what was concerning to me is that the steam, I mean, we talked about the inefficiencies of buildings, I mean, for that building to cool down that quick, when the steam was shut off, it just blows my mind that it wouldn't have retained any more heat than that. I understand it was kind of windy. Well, you said new windows put in that thing, you think that building would have retained more heat?
Well,
Or the air handler was shut off. Did you shut the air handler off at all?
we
or-
just shut the air handlers off to keep the cold air from coming in.
So,
But the thing is, up until earlier today,
mhm.
yes, air handlers were on. But for the last week also, we're trying to, it takes like about 5 pounds of pressure to get up to the Franklin.
Right,
We were running, with the way the leak was, we were running 2 boilers at full.
full capacity.
Yeah, and we weren't even pushing 3 up there. So
Because of those.
the Franklin was already cold
Okay,
before this happened. So we had cold rooms and,
yeah.
it was operable, but it was a little chilly in there.
Okay.
Colder than it is right here.
Mhm.
So I think when that happened, over the course of the day, it didn't take long to get down to where we got some rooms in the 50 degrees. So,
Okay.
just so you're aware how we got to that point.
So with so how much additional are they thinking with these additional leaks springing? How much additional are they thinking they're gonna have to go up?
Well, you're looking at 35,000, or the initial $67,000 proposal was actually only about 57,000. It wasn't as bad as,
So it's 57?
the initial one has ended up being 57, and this one will be 35.
So you're looking at, I mean, the worst case scenario would have went to $102,500 on both, but it's gonna come in at well under 100,000, it sounds like. And then, are they planning on working on Saturday? I wouldn't hope they would.
Well, if we have to close the next 2 days, that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna,
Is that's the best sensible, I mean, I would say that.
yeah, it got down to 52 in
I mean,
Franklin
because
today,
if you're 31,000, or 35,000 to have them fix additional pipe, or there's no penalty for like not having school. I mean, this is an unforeseen emergency. So, I mean, how do you feel about having the next 2 days?
I'm not excited about it. I never like closing school, but
I mean, you're closing just the elementary.
No.
Well, it's one or the other, I mean.
You can't close. Oh, okay.
I wouldn't think, if you close one school, you gotta close them all. I
Like
mean,
even in Gilbert.
that-
Oh,
and
see.
I guess
Okay,
what
right,
I'm
right, right,
thinking,
right.
but what I'm thinking is, you know, the younger kids have older siblings that may be able to be taking care of them while
Okay,
the parents are
right.
working on
Okay.
such short notice.
Okay,
Right,
Right, right.
families.
Yeah.
I just remember when growing up in Gilbert, it was like, when it snowed out, it was school for in-town kids only. And if you lived in the country, so if you lived in town, you had to walk to school. You know?
When you're convincing your
When it was
parents to
30.
move out to the country.
Yeah,
So I think we should do that.
yeah, let's,
Let them,
Just get it done.
yep,
Yeah.
give it them.
As soon as possible?
We'll tell them.
yep.
Okay.
Next up, we're gonna have,
So Jeff, Ben, the project will be done by
Thursday morning.
Thursday
That's what we're
morning?
hoping for. No, I mean, unless there should be no other problems, but
Okay.
Just the right and unforeseen things, they should have it, because it's exposed, right, the pipe's exposed at the moment, and
Okay,
So when would we be, so closing school for tomorrow
tomorrow and Wednesday.
and Wednesday?
is there anything you want me to let people know?
I'll go, I'm gonna get John going here and I'll go make the calls.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
So next up on the list, we have John here to talk about the board vacancy, so we'll answer any questions that you have, I'm gonna go make a couple phone calls.
Is there any legal information we should have for, we're doing, talk about the board
You're
vacancy
talking
there?
about Mr. Melner, I'm assuming?
Yes,
and,
yep.
I understand that he's been called overseas. Is he there now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Is he going to attend any meetings electronically at all?
No, as a matter of fact, I wrote down some notes here just for this discussion, because October 14th, I received an email from him. I sent him an email on October 14th asking about his connectivity, because up until the 25th of October, the plan was, once he was settled at his base, he was going to let us know when his connectivity was good, so that we could get going on having meetings with him, like through telepresence. So October 14th, I had emailed him to ask him about that connectivity, and he said that it was hit and miss at that time, and he had asked when the next meetings were, because he would try and see what he could do. But then I hadn't heard from him, and Justine hadn't heard from him as well. And then October 25th was when we received an email stating that he was attempting to withdraw from candidacy because he received information. It sounded as though he received information from one of the higher-ups in military about not being able to be on the board because he would be gone for over 270 days. So he was trying to withdraw, but it was already too late. There was already early voters that had voted and absentee ballots and that kind of thing. So I think you can only,
2 days after
2 days
the,
after you put
after the
in your
final filing
application.
date is when you have to withdraw.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you're on the ballot, you can't be off it.
yeah, right. So at that time, my understanding was that, so October 25th is when we got that email. October 28th, he sent an email saying that he hoped to return to his seat, but that he could no longer correspond with us. So,
Okay, it's reasonable from what you just said to assume that he's, I think you all know, or at least have been shared with some information about, if you miss or can't serve for 90 days or more, either serving as a board member or attending meetings, the board then can declare a vacancy to exist by a board resolution, and you should. You have a 7-person board. You essentially are functioning with 6. The problem with not declaring a vacancy and appointing somebody to fill that vacancy, it's an old Attorney General's opinion that goes back, but it's still valid, that says that boards must fill vacancies when they occur. And some of the practical problems are For example, there are several statutes that require a vote of the full board to pass certain things. Employing a teacher who is related to somebody who's on the board, for example. Contracts, school district bond issues, all require a unanimous vote of the full board. When you have a vacancy that's not filled, you don't have a full board. So consequently, you can't act in that capacity.
Okay.
So, since Mr. Melnar is not going to be here, I think the board really has to declare a vacancy. A resolution is prepared, we can prepare that if you wish.
So I have a question already. So when you say declare a vacancy, my question right away is, when you say that, are we declaring a temporary vacancy because he does have hope to return?
You're declaring a vacancy pursuant to this statute. And under this statute, which is subdivision 4 of the statute, during his term of office, and he's been reelected, he would have the ability to return whichever happens first. Either is the time left on his, like 4 years he's in there, expires, or he comes back. Once he comes back, the person that you select to fill the vacancy is out, and he's restored to his position.
Okay, so that was what I was under the understanding too.
That's what he's looking at right now with the Department of Defense. So
Pardon me?
he's gonna be deployed for 200
Yeah,
More
which
than
is roughly a year.
270 days.
Yeah.
so
270 days under the
270.
Title 10.
And he may not be able to serve because of their requirements, and he certainly can't be here. So a vacancy is going to exist, you need to declare that vacancy, and then through whatever process you decide, you select someone to fill that vacancy until he's able to return.
return, he
And
takes
then
off.
automatically, he would, the board would then declare that he's come back and he's back on the board.
It's the
So
same
it's like a
thing
temporary
basically, John,
vacancy.
with employment. I mean, I'm employed
Yeah,
by you and I get activated, I'm gone for 6 months.
essentially the same.
When I
yes.
return, I return.
Military rights.
I return
Yeah.
my military.
Although the
think
statute
that is
doesn't
the
make reference to
appropriate way to do
it,
it.
I think they contemplate that.
Yeah.
But that's essentially how it works, so if, based on what you've said, Randy, he's not going to be
Participating
participating,
from now until.
so then the board should
then-
declare a vacancy now and select someone to fill that appointment through the rest of this term plus whatever, the start of the next term until he comes back.
Okay, so when Mona resigned from board chair, resigned from the school board, period, we advertised for it, got applicants for that, for the position or the vacancy. We did interviews and then we selected. Can we continue with that process?
You do whatever process you want.
Yes.
Sometimes that's used, sometimes they go by the school board election, sometimes you just simply advertise for interested parties, whatever process you want to use. But the difference here is that this is a temporary,
Right,
presumably a temporary
right.
placement.
Unless he finds out from the Department of Defense or whatever that he can't on his end.
Well, on his
Well,
end,
he can, but when he can serve when he returns. He just can't serve while he's on active duty.
whatever they say from the Department of Defense standpoint has nothing to do with what the board does. If he
That's-
returns
Yeah,
back to civilian life, he's entitled to his board position back.
okay.
So I think the best thing to do is, I mean, do we seek somebody out for the rest of his term, which is up in January 1st, and then seek somebody again? Or do we just wait till January 1st and then try to find somebody to fill that vacancy?
The Department of Education, based on an Attorney General's opinion, feels that you need to fill vacancies as expeditiously as you can. Yeah, so I think to wait until January might be, you have your reorganization meeting in January, might be waiting a little bit too long, but it might take that long to select someone.
Okay.
But I think we need to declare the vacancy.
Yes, so we can.
And when's your next meeting?
Tonight,
When?
tonight at 6.
Beyond that, we'd have to get a resolution prepared and in your hands, setting forth the factual basis for the vacancy and then the board acting on the resolution.
We actually have one more meeting
Get a
this month,
resolution
and then
prepared.
we only have one meeting during the month of December.
There's one more in
I think John
November.
does it.
One more in November and one meeting in December.
Okay, by your next meeting in November, we could have a resolution in hand, and you could act on it, and then at the same time, call for whatever process you want to select someone to fill that vacancy.
I think we could advertise for interested.
You could advertise for interested parties, yeah, and ask them to submit.
We can't do that though until we declare the vacancy,
Yes,
correct?
that is correct.
But
Okay.
that's what Tom is saying, that night though, when we do the resolution, Tom's saying is, that's when we would have the decision on how we want to proceed with the vacancy of the.
And advertise if you want to do that, something in the newspapers or otherwise. There's ways to do it, like you did it the last
I
time.
would, personally, I would like to stay consistent with what we've done in the past, and that was to advertise, see if there's applicants that are interested, do interviews, and then make a decision by more majority vote on that person.
Yeah, and it would be nice to have somebody in place as soon as possible, no later than the reorganizational meeting in January, which is usually your first meeting.
And-
Is this something that I could have a special meeting for, like,
Sure.
could we do a special meeting potentially before
The
our
next meeting.
next meeting?
Be mindful, of course, that, one of the other problems with a 3-3 board is that you get ties sometimes, and that's why you also want to fill that
Yeah,
vacancy.
right,
So you can avoid getting ties on various votes that might come up.
okay.
So the sooner you do that, the better it is. You can function as a full board and do what you need to do to serve the constituents and the patrons of the district.
So would you work with Jeff on the resolution, or does Jeff do that, or?
I'll
will I
talk to
do
Jeff,
that?
I'll prepare the resolution and send it over to Jeff, and it's gonna simply be a factually based resolution which states, recite certain facts that you just gave us, that he's gonna be gone for at least 90 days,
270. More than
and
that.
consequently a vacancy exists, and calling for
Applicants,
applicants, that'll be a separate motion then, would be that part of it.
okay,
The resolution would simply declare the vacancy.
okay.
Then the board can pass the motion as to how you want to fill that vacancy.
I would say that we would have the agenda item as the action piece of how we would fill.
Okay.
But if he's gone for 270 days, that means sometime next year he should be back.
Right.
And he's got 3 more years left then on his term roughly then.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think he's still a football coach, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions on that issue?
Nope, I think I'm clear on that.
This is different than a vacancy created by resignation or ineligibility. Somebody leaves the district, resigns, that calls for special elections and all that type of thing. This is a different
Situation,
subdivision of the statute.
okay.
All
Okay.
right, well, next up on the list
Thank
is
you. Thank you.
Okay.
licensure discussion. Minnesota Johnson tonight. But we can only start by giving you some background. So this past legislative session, there's a colored sheet here. They changed the way teaching licenses are issued. You can see there's different tiers. Particularly the ones that we're interested in is tier 1 and tier 2, and those are typically people that are teaching out of their content area. For instance, if you had a math license and somebody asked you to teach science, that would be out of your licensure area. So, a couple things that this affects. One, it affects the ULA process in the current contract, which I asked John to speak to, because there is a couple things here. There's one that says Article 10 on the top of it. This is the language that EdMN wants us to consider for the change in the ULA. I also included the old language somewhere.
I think it's a single sheet,
Should be a single sheet.
of 6 leave allowance and
Yeah,
unrequested leave of that.
so, go ahead, John, you wanna speak to that?
I've had a chance to look at this, and my first question when I read it was, to Jeff, was, who sent that to you? Because it's clearly a one-sided type of proposition, and he said it was sent by Ed, Minnesota, which I suspected maybe it was. First of all, the ULA process doesn't change until July of 19. The existing ULA process you have under the current contract remains in place through June 30th of next year. What you do have to do then, according to the new statutory scheme, is the district must negotiate a new ULA process with Education Minnesota for 2019, starting July 1, 2019. And that's what they're doing here. They're suggesting proposed language to you for the negotiated ULA process. The old ULA process will no longer, that you have in your contract and by statute, again, is out as of June 30th, 2019. They're proposing this as the new negotiated ULA process. It may be very well a starting point, a good talking point, but you need to sit down with them and negotiate a new ULA process which incorporates and addresses the various tiers, tier 1, 2, 3, and 4 licensing requirements. Some of the things they have in here are probably pretty good. Some of the things they have in here are not good. One of them specifically that stands out to me, under the current ULA process, unrequested leave of absence process, is when the district proposes people for unrequested leave of absence, the hearing is conducted by a hearing officer hired by the Board of Education. We haven't had hearings in this district for a few years. It's been very rare. It used to be every year, but it's been a while since we've had them. But the process used to be conducted by a hearing officer hired by the board, because where it says by the Board of Education, or you might recall an earlier opinion I gave you, it states that the courts have emphasized that a board can't sit as judge and jury. You have to hire a hearing officer to hear these things, and the hearing officers generally hear these things and make findings. In here, they don't have that. They simply refer and say that a teacher who's placed on ULA can follow the grievance process, which means through arbitration through the Bureau of Mediation Services. The chances of districts winning grievances through the Bureau of Mediation Services are slim, and maybe slightly better than slim, because of the bias that exists among arbitrators that are members of the arbitration panels for Bureau of Mediation Services. That's why the teachers incorporated that in there. They would love to have all of these handled by the arbitration process, an arbitrator hired by, you pay the cost of it through Bureau of Mediation Services. And the chances of you prevailing are not good when you have them, because they come in with a bias. Most of them are very, very pro-union. Whereas a hearing officer, independent hearing officer, has no axe to grind and comes in objectively and makes decisions based on facts. So that would be one of the things that stands out to me that you'd want to sit down and certainly not agree with. But the point I'm trying to make is that this is a starting point. I think you need to have a committee, negotiation committee, that sits down with them and comes up with a negotiated ULA process effective July 1 of 2019. This is their proposal. You may have a different one, and I can certainly advise along those lines too as to what you want to incorporate. But some of these are good ideas that they have. I don't object to some. I only object to the one that, the grievance process. So again, you don't have to worry about this until July of 2019. When does your teacher's contract run out?
Then,
Then? Okay. Right. So as part of that negotiation process, this would be a time to negotiate a new ULA leave process. And it's a must. It says, the statute says you must negotiate it.
so you're recommending we start like in February? We can,
If not before.
Before that?
Yeah. I think that's gonna take a while to get through this ULA process. I don't know about the other issues, but usually it comes down to money frequently, but I think you need to sit down and look at that. And hopefully the MSBA might even have some sample ULA policies that you might follow by that time. If they don't, we certainly can help you with that.
any questions on it? You haven't had a chance to read it, obviously. Just wanted to get that in front of you. So then the other thing regarding that I haven't shown John yet. So the other thing about tier 1 and tier 2 licenses is technically they aren't a part of the bargaining unit. So MSBA and Minnesota has gotten together, and there's a sheet that looks like this. There's a model agreement between those employees who are currently are licensed but are teaching out of their area, so they apply for a tier 1 or tier 2 license, so that they can remain in the bargaining unit.
So they're proposing that they would be in the bargaining unit, the 1 and 2?
Yeah.
Really? Okay. Those positions would be in the bargaining unit. The people would have a choice, of course, as to where
Yes,
they want
yeah.
to be.
So basically what this is saying is, if someone has, it's a licensed teacher, but they're teaching out of their areas, they're on a tier 1 or a tier 2 license. It says they don't waive their continuing contract rights, they stay in the union. It's not a modification of the employee's continuing contract rights.
I think this is all part of the negotiation process.
This one?
Yeah.
Think so? Because the only reason I bring this to your attention now is that because technically, and we have 2 of these people in our district right now, and technically, they're not a part of the bargaining unit
Right.
at the moment.
Right.
So this is an agreement that would allow them to be in the bargaining unit.
And that is negotiable,
Okay.
as far as whether they can be or should be. You look at the definition under your contract, under the master agreement, of who they represent, and there's no reference, it only talks about licensed teachers. It doesn't distinguish between tier 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Right.
And I think you need to get that, it should be addressed all at one time, in my view.
Okay. How about these folks that are currently, we have 2 employees.
Do you have tier 1s and 2s
We have
working
2
now?
tier 1s right now,
Yeah.
actually 2 tier 2s.
And they're not part of the unit?
They're not part of the unit.
As Education Minnesota is a local threatened agreement,
No,
even as they are.
they're asking for an agreement to say that they can be.
Why should you agree to that?
That's why we're here tonight.
Why shouldn't we?
Pardon me?
Why shouldn't we?
Why shouldn't we agree to it? Well, essentially you're
I mean,
redefining.
I honestly
Yeah,
don't.
you're redefining the unit is what they're requesting you to do, to encompass a broader
Another-
group of people.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
But it's not necessarily broader, because this is only for teachers who have a license, they have a tier 4 license. They're just not using it, they're currently in a different position.
Well, and my concern is that, and I don't know how much we want to get into a discussion right now on it, if we do end up turning it over to a negotiation. I mean, we know that we utilize the needy teacher sometimes.
I would be inclined to use that as negotiation leverage in order to accomplish what you're trying to set out to be. Keep things as they are and tell the local that we'll agree to sit down and negotiate with this as part of the ULA process. And if we can agree on ULA language, we can agree to perhaps incorporate all the portions of this contract. But I think you take away some of your bargaining position by agreeing to it now.
Thoughts from anyone?
Well, if we have to open up I mean, if we're needing to get the ULA stuff opened up sooner rather than later, and I mean, moving the tier 1 and tier 2 as part of into the union anyways, I mean, that would end up being a contract change then.
And moving them into, you're going to have to eventually do it if you have a negotiated ULA process, which addresses tier 1 and 2 and places them at a lower level of significance and having certain lower level of rights than 3 and 4 have, similar to probationary teachers. And I think all of that has to be addressed. That's my point. As part of that ULA process, to discuss all of these things. It's going to be interesting to see, are they going to have more rights than a probationary teacher? Are they going to achieve continuing contract rights? And that's an interesting thing to look at, and I think that has to be addressed. You follow what I'm saying? Right now,
Yeah.
after the probationary period, first contract in Minnesota, 3 years, they get continuing contract rates. But this is a hybrid now. You get these tier 1 and tier 2 licensed people. Does that also apply to them? It's unclear right now, but in the proposal that the teachers have, it doesn't appear that, I think they're proposing that they be placed somewhere like probationary teachers. But I think that needs to be looked at and discussed with them and come up with an answer. I mean, if the people that are here now, Jeff, this is their first year?
Yes.
Well, it does have some limitations. If you look at the bottom of this, it did have some limitations that they
I haven't
identified.
seen that.
Oh, because it does say some limitations as far as how long they can remain in this tier.
Right.
So that's why, I mean, based on kind of what you were talking about as far
Yeah,
as the 3 years.
I'm familiar with the
back.
limitations that they have, but the question then is, let's assume they're teaching out of licensure the first year or 2. All of a sudden, a vacancy exists in the district in an area for which they are licensed. Do those first 2 years count toward tenure? Those are all questions that have to be addressed.
Yeah.
And I'll guarantee you there'll be a whole bunch of grievances and perhaps even lawsuits until that is resolved. I really think you need to sit down and hash it out with them, and we'll have a better idea. And that Minnesota might, again, by that time, might have Jeff, can I have this one?
Yes.
We'll have maybe a policy of their own on that. If they don't, then we can sit down and discuss that with you too, as far as what can be done. But you do have to do it. The old ULA language in the statute and in the policy and your contract goes away as of June 30th of 2019. And you have to come up with one. That's why you get paid all these big bucks to serve on the school board and sit down and engage in negotiations like that. It's not gonna be easy, I'll guarantee you that. I mean, they're placing the onus on school boards now to sit down and negotiate these things. And it used to be mandated by statute as to how it went. And I'm not sure why they got rid of that, but that's what they're doing.
Any other questions or comments on that topic, you know? Thanks, John.
Good to see you all.
Thank you, you too.
That's one.
I'll have a resolution over by the next meeting and vacancy.
If we can have it as soon as possible,
Yeah, it'll
I'd
be,
like to get going on it and maybe have a
I'll
special
have it done
meeting.
this week sometime.
Okay, perfect.
We'll get it sent out.
Thanks, John.
Gonna do the committees.
Just, okay. So the committees, there were things that were coming up that needed to be taken care of, and we're all busy, and I felt the need to delegate to committees because of that purpose. I want to be productive, and I want to make sure that teachers and those people feel like they're being supported. I did attend that athletic committee on, I think it was October 30th, because it had been requested, you know, that a board member sit on that committee, and I went to it because I wanted to make sure that somebody was there. But going forward, if you could continue to go to those meetings, and then once January comes and we have our reorganizational meeting, we can determine whether or not we want to have, committees of the whole, or if we want to divvy out. I just want to be the most
So
productive
Bill
that we
will do
can.
those too?
Athletic committee,
Yep.
yep. And then grievance committee would be Kelly. Until
And the next meeting,
January.
December 14th, 16th?
I think it was the 18th or something like that. I
Yeah, I
can
didn't
look again and
volunteer.
I'll let you know later.
So to get off track a little bit, Jeff, I requested that we have some sort of email that we can know when all these meetings are gonna take place, being the collaboration and all this stuff. Are we working on that at all, so we can,
I sent one out on last week.
I don't know.
Well, there was the one that came out, about, I think there was 4 different meetings that
Things, the committee ones.
for the
I was up,
tax
I'm
ones.
up to date till Wednesday, 14th was the last.
For the collaborative ones.
I'll send out the rest of it for the remainder of the year.
I was on, October 31st, and, that was the last thing I had on my iPad. I didn't get updated until Sunday afternoon, this last Sunday afternoon. So I never
For
knew-
what?
His notifications from the
Yeah,
state.
I didn't have anything on an iPad from the 31st up until Sunday afternoon. I never knew we were gonna have a 5 o'clock, study meeting there
Okay.
until Sunday afternoon. So I don't know why, but I never got updated until
But I
Sunday.
mean,
I checked it
like, even if
Sunday
you-
morning.
Even if you check the postings outside the wall, just to see if there's anything up there, but I don't know what to do about the technology piece if you're not getting those
I don't know if
emails.
they were
I
working
mean,
on it or what, you know, I didn't talk to Jason or Tom percent, so.
Working on,
he's saying that he's not getting emails
Yeah.
about committee meetings. I've seen your name on them, I've seen your name on the committee meetings, that you're receiving those
That was
emails,
gone,
but
you know.
if you're not getting them, I'm not sure that would be a technology issue that you'd have to talk to Jason and Tom about.
Well, I thought I just mentioned it, so you don't think I'd be meetings or something,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Well,
Just-
this
I
one
mean-
was the only one last minute. I mean, the MSBA one, we did know back last month about it. I mean, that one was rescheduled and we did know well before October 31st.
yeah, and I asked Jeff to post it right away, so it was out on that board for probably 3 weeks for the training, for MSBA training, but.
You got my notification, Jeff, I was leaving for
What's that?
Arizona, correct? I left you a message, I was leaving for Arizona, I wouldn't
Yeah.
get back until I never get out there, okay.
What was-
Well, I'll do another one now for the rest of this year.
Another email with all the
Oh,
meeting dates.
now we can do
Yeah.
collaborative and study sessions and board business and our regular board meetings. I mean,
I'll do it.
Just-
Well,
for-
and I just wanna clear something up too, because, and since we are talking about committee assignments, this encompasses, I would assume, the task force stuff. So there is no issue with us, and maybe I should have asked with John being there, there's no issue with us being on, like, attending all of those meetings if we want. We
No,
just
it's-
shouldn't probably sit together, is that?
It's always posted on the wall that there may be school board members there, but this is not a school board meeting, and there will be no school business taking place.
Okay, so we can attend any of them. Okay, because I was under the impression that at the very beginning, we did post-it notes or whatever and put our name on the different committees that were going to be formed. We put our name on the ones that we wanted to participate in. I think that happened at the Parkview School. And so I was under the impression that we were doing that because of the whole open meeting laws and
No,
that
it's
kind of
just-
thing. So
it's just a
I'm
matter
going
of-
to be attending more of those
It was
facilities.
just a matter of trying not to burn people out. That's why we did that activity.
Okay. But now that we're getting further along in the process, I think that anytime we can attend them, that
I'll
would
be
be
there
great.
for the food.
That too.
Dan's got an
Okay.
idea for
Hey,
something.
Jeff's good,
Yeah.
Noel's all cucumbers and pears, Jeff's pizza and chips.
Dan's got a different idea, man. I'm listening.
Mhm.
Oh, getting sick of the pizza.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Tom
Okay.
told you that.
Huh?
Tom Tamaro told you that, he's sick of pizza.
Okay, so everybody's okay with that committee assignment stuff? Because we do need to make sure that we're representing and supporting. Okay. What's
Right, so the
next?
last one on the list tonight is contracts, and I wanted to open the floor in case somebody has a question about any of the contracts that are on the agenda tonight, but I also wanted to speak to the school perceptions one that you've got. And I made another copy of it for you, it should be in front of you. This is basically what, the school perceptions is the one that did the Virginia survey last time. When they were surveyed about their levy and miners project and whatnot. So the purpose of this would be, they're gonna survey both communities on where we're at so far and with what the task force committees came up with. And on November 19th, which is next Monday, we're gonna meet over at the service co-op as a joint board. And these folks are gonna be there to take your input as to what you wanna know, so what should go on to that survey. But this is the contract item, and this
Okay,
is,
so on that contract, you got, it says on the front, consolidation, that's a scary word to a lot of people.
you're right about that.
It is
I
very
guess I didn't even read it.
And it's, you know, and I'm reading this, the possibility, then on page 1, you have the possibility of consolidation. I mean, I'm kind of like, we're still in the collaboration and cooperation stages. This might send the wrong message to a lot of people.
Well,
I mean,
I hear
we
you.
know that maybe in the future, that's a potential possibility, but as far as,
I think all things are still on the table.
right,
and-
As
right,
far
but
as
it's,
collaboration,
right,
consolidation.
but this basically
Well-
sticks out.
Yeah, but I think also just keeping in mind though that this was written by them.
Right, and that's what they do.
And so I don't think they probably focus so much on
Okay.
that word probably as much as
the
we are clearly
Right,
paying
right.
attention to the words that are being
Yeah.
used.
Because it might.
I mean,
scare
I bet you
people.
they probably just put it, the word because that's
Yeah.
a word of bringing two schools together.
Right, right,
I will mention that, but basically,
Yeah.
what you're concerned tonight is this last page where it has the expense breakdown and the different phases of the the operation, obviously this will be divided by 2.
So we got $9,400 in phase 1, 2, 3, and 4 total
Yep.
phases of this procedure. And then we got site meeting planning. They're gonna charge us $900 per site visit plus expenses. Any call or web conferences will be charged $200. They will charge us for prepaid envelopes at a cost of 5 cents each, or envelopes at 5 cents each. Do we know how many surveys we're gonna send out? I mean, what this possibly could cost?
It's gonna be in the neighborhood of 10,000.
Or we can hit the IEEE be up for that, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this gonna be discussed tonight at the regular meeting?
You're gonna, what I'm asking you to do tonight is to approve the contract with School Perceptions, but then on September 19th, you folks will have a chance to talk with School Perceptions about what you want on the survey.
September?
November 19th, sorry.
Oh, okay. I'm like,
That would, you'd have to get me a time machine for that.
yeah.
November 19th. I'm dreaming of warmer weather.
Yeah.
Well, my feeling is, the public was saying, I heard some people saying that they did not get mailings, and I think this is addressing that, so that we can make sure that people are getting,
It's more thorough and
yes.
Yeah.
negative, and
And
more
I
neutral.
feel like we're listening to people
Mhm.
by making this move to go with this company, rather than doing it ourselves. It may be an expense, but I think it will be worth it.
Yep. And this, so, do we know how much ballpark figure what this might cost?
Neighborhood of 22,000.
Half of it, okay, half of it from us. And potentially. Okay,
Actually, it's enough of it.
okay.
So, I guess one of my questions, and maybe I can save it to the next week, is how they figure out addressing the 2 voter households. Because that, I just remember that was one of the comments
Yeah.
that we heard back from. And it's interesting because we do know that we have very strong independent households that have very different opinions on what should be done. And making sure that each person in the household has an opportunity to
Sure.
do the survey.
And I'll certainly let them address that, but I know that
Okay.
they assign everybody a survey number. So you can actually do it online as well, you type in your number.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah, I was just kind of wondering about, I just remember that feedback stuck in my head.
I put some thoughts into this too, and as long as we're discussing it all, and then we're gonna vote on it tonight, so this won't go into discussion tonight then?
Well, you can discuss it tonight,
Tonight then?
then. You can do it right now too.
Yeah, you can do it now.
Well, okay. You know, in the past, we've hired several consulting firms, you know, and this is over the years, and, we haven't followed through on our findings, you know, and, so, I don't know what the total cost of this was to our district, you know, the different opinions that we've had, and, I do agree that on both surprise approach would be the first start, fresh start, the way to go about it, which will enable us to make some uniform decisions. I do have, however, some concerns. Their decisions today impacts the new board members that have been directly involved in this discussion, especially going from collaboration to consolidation. Now, originally, we were consolidated, or we were collaboration. It's the business agent and transportation, and then we started moving into different areas. The thing that we have to remember that the new board members were elected to represent the constituents of Eveleth-Gilbert. And I remain open to new ideas. I mean, I'm not closed on any one thing. My questions are to read the material provided by School Perceptions. They must have a sample survey in hand that meets something close to our district. And So before we vote on this, shouldn't we have the opportunity to review it? And prior to making a decision. Also in the material, they speak about forming questions. And in that survey, does this mean it would be unbiased? If the questions are formed to meet the different perspectives of our districts? Are we forming an opinion or looking for an opinion on this? Am I correct in assuming the expense to hire school perceptions are shared equally between the districts involved, as well as all mailing costs engaged between the city? So if more mailing has to be done in Virginia, are they gonna pick that cost up, or are we gonna bear that cost with them too? As a 50-50 deal on everything here? And you look at these other, this could go into belonging some money when you look at the back page, you start looking at all the different phase one strategy developments, and then you go into the additional costs, you know, site visits, these envelopes we were talking about, you know, paper survey, how this gonna be based on? Would it be equal? We're
Well,
gonna
I
take up
think-
half that cost?
I think Jeff just said that they would, we're splitting the cost of this.
So we'll go
the-
50-50 on the cost.
Correct, right, Jeff?
Now, their population's a lot more than ours.
It really is.
So Jeff, will there be a sample ballot, sample
Yeah.
survey that we'll be able to review, or, I mean, is that
On
something?
the 19th, they're gonna bring that in, and they're gonna also ask you guys what you would like to know.
So we're just gauging, so we're just sending a survey out to gauge the public on what they think about this whole deal as of what we're doing, right? Is that what I'm,
It's another checks and
That's
balance.
enough, yeah.
right, just seeing what,
It's
just
getting their
seeing,
input.
okay.
It's another checks
So
and balance to see where we're at.
It's not a vote, it's not something, it's so, if 90% of the people says, come back and says we wanna consolidate with Virginia or whatever, just whatever happens, it's, you know, we would use that as gospel to go ahead and move forward, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just, we just wanted to see what
It's
is
information,
going on.
it's information for you guys to make a decision.
Okay, all right, very good, okay.
I mean, if 90% of the people are saying, we don't want this, I mean, that's gonna tell you that
You
I don't
got
want
it?
it.
It's
Right.
gonna be a message, you know, because I guess we've all talked about, you know, listening to the taxpayers and the citizens, and this is an opportunity. I think we've spent a lot of time trying to get information out, between listening sessions, all of these committee meetings, trying to get information out about, you know, what this is all, what it's all about. And I think that going with the school perceptions, to make sure that we get mailings out to who needs to get the mailings, I think that all that stuff is trying to inform the public and be transparent about this process, and getting input from citizens on what they'd like to see happen. I mean, to be honest, if it comes back and it says that 90% of the people want us to continue to go forward with whatever it may be, whether it's elementary school in all three towns, or if it's a K through 12, or that's gonna
Have a lot of weight.
have a lot of weight for me. Because we're asking the people in our communities
In other words,
what they're looking for, what they
We'll be
support,
giving them what the public wants
Exactly.
versus making,
In the
our
end,
own decisions.
if it goes to
individual.
referendum, then, hey, that's what the constituents want, you know, and I guess we go with it, I agree with that, but I'd like to see a sample. They've got 19 listings here, recent ones of different schools and that. I'd just like to
But
see
that-
a copy
but that's
of how
what-
they
We
present it
will see
before we
that.
vote on it.
We will see that.
On November 19th.
And
We're
I'm-
voting on it tonight to accept this.
You're accepting the contract, but
Mhm.
Uh,
I'm telling you, on the 19th, if you guys don't like what you see, you can just say, hey, we're out. Because at that point, we're $900 in for a site visit only.
Well, or we can ask for changes to be
Right.
made to
Yeah.
what
Or you can ask
we're
for changes to be
asking
made.
for. I mean, I think the part is we heard loud and clear with the last survey that our district did independently, that there were issues with that, and people had issues with that. And so we
We're
have
addressing
talked,
it.
and we're addressing it to have a company that does this as their job do this. So, I mean, this is just a contract, we're not signing into what the survey is, and the survey is gonna look different
And we don't know
for
what
each and every
numbers
school, because, and I guess I don't wanna see a sample survey, because it's gonna look different based on our conversation next week. You know what I mean? The conversation is gonna guide what the survey should look like next week. You know, so their survey from one of these other schools is gonna look probably different than what we're asking of, because every school is different.
But the survey is gonna have an impact upon constituents, so
That's why we're providing input on
that's
November
why it should be
19th.
done in an unbiased way.
Well,
That's what I'd like to
these,
see us.
they should be professional researchers that do surveys, this is their job.
If we scrap out of this, we're just scrapping out of the survey, we're not scrapping out of
If
the
you
whole
decide,
concept.
if you don't like what you hear on the 19th, you guys can just say, "Hey, we don't wanna do this. You're out $900 because they came to a site visit." You don't have to do this. I mean, but it was on the plan
Yeah.
that we're gonna survey the public at some
We're
point.
strictly talking survey, not the whole concept of the academy. If we say that it's survey, we're all, we don't want it. That's just, that, total. Yeah, okay.
We're not
It's not
making
the
any,
concept.
we're
It's
not
not the
making any
concept.
decisions on an academy model. And eventually, it should go to the people to vote
Yeah.
on whether or not they want
That
it.
goes to referendum.
That is my thought, it should go to the people to make that decision.
But this is,
This is strictly
the
the
results
survey.
of the survey, we want a good survey, we want an unbiased survey. I mean, yeah, I want complete clear opinions from the people in our communities to give us, I want to hear what they have to say. And because that's gonna shape the decisions that we're making.
The
So-
questions that we have in our heads are things that we should be telling them on November 19th that we'd like to see on the survey. So the things that we're concerned about,
Yeah, I'd like to see something.
or whatever.
Vote on it.
Yeah, we'll see, and I think we will see that on the 19th. We'll see what the questions are on the survey. Okay,
yep,
you said?
so, yep, take a brief recess.